Charles?
Impressive.
What's even more impressive is that I've forgotten batteries for myself. So give me just 1 second here while I retrieve them.
Sure. I'll just, I mean, for those people who may not have young children and know that there's a movie out called Ralph Breaks the Internet, this is meant to be a takeoff on that. And the main character in Ralph Breaks the Internet, and what was the prequel to that?
Wreck-It Ralph.
Wreck-It Ralph. So we have Disrupt-It Donald.
Yes.
And we have Topo Gigio on his shoulder. Hillary Clinton.
Exactly, Hillary. So, each week, Charles, it's a growing challenge to create some sort of interesting animated element to open the show with, and I pushed it a little bit to the edge today, right up until the last moment, but we've got our friend Wreck-It Donald there. I've included some digital modifications to what is normally in that image. You know, there's been a little bit of a controversy about Patreon. They've been kicking off some people who are considered conservatives or whatever. I put Patreon in here because, of course, people can still sponsor the show by going to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. You know, Charles, I've implemented a new feature that we've spoken about for quite some time. It's more of an offer, really. People who become sponsors of the show for $10 per month or higher are going to get a free Sunday with Charles screensaver. Let me see if I can activate that for people to check out right now. I believe this should do it. Oh, yes. So people who become sponsors on Crowdsource the Truth, patreon.com/crowdsource the truth, they're going to get this great screensaver where they can cycle through all the different, many of the most popular graphic images that have been created for our program here. And I've included over 50, and this is volume 1, of course. So people who enjoy the graphics there are going to be able to become sponsors at patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. And for $10 a month or higher, they're going to get that free. They can download it for Mac or Windows. So constantly trying to come up with new ways for people to enjoy some of the different things we do here at Crowdsource the Truth, and also to keep the channel financially healthy, trying to avoid any kind of corporate sponsorship, of course. But I am trying to arrange oh, this is terrible. How is this? Made another mistake. So, okay, people who are waiting in this posted link, unfortunately, there's going to be a new link. If you just go out to the main channel, there's going to be a new link for the show. See, this is what happens when I stack everything up to the last minute. I apologize, Charles. I should have made that Pac-Man animation last night, but I was trying to take the Saturday off there.
It's all right.
So our show is going out live, but people are going to have to go out to the main channel to get to the live broadcast. Anyway, Charles, I apologize for vamping and talking about the screensaver so much there.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. So we've got a big show, and there's a lot going on. I know people have been very patient, waiting to see something actually happening. And in the week ahead, we have some big news.
Yes.
And but to begin with, if you remember back in the very beginning when Donald Trump won, and heads were exploding, and Weissman was nursing a hangover from the Hillary victory party, which turned into be an immolation disaster. Initially, all the fake yapper and all the wise people at the Children's News Network were saying that we got to take Donald Trump's Twitter account away from him. We've got to take his ability to tweet away from it. When in reality, the power of his tweets is really overwhelms traditional media. And I think we have to say, going back through the campaign and back through the election and back through the presidency, Donald Trump has used Twitter to fantastic effect. Now maybe they're going to now try to kick him off Twitter
Really?
I don't know. I'm just saying. I mean,
They'd kick him off Patreon if he tries to go on there.
right. But what he was doing is really using Twitter to bypass the filters that are traditionally used. Many times I've been on television. Actually, the producers at some of the networks that are frowned upon, Sputnik or RT or whatever, people look down their nose on Russian or Chinese or other producers and networks. I find that their producers and networks are far more open than CNBC, even in certain cases than Fox. Very often, I mean, I was asked, for example, in RT once to react to a speech that Putin gave on short notice with me not even knowing what he was going to say and RT not knowing what I might say in response.
Right.
And that really just doesn't happen all that often on the mainstream media. So Donald Trump has gone, I think, around the mainstream media, direct to the consumer via his tweets, direct to his base.
They hate that.
And they absolutely hate it because it's working. It's working extremely well.
Yeah, they want to be able to spin everything that he says and flavor it and temper it.
And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but you think about Paris burning and the reports now of other places in Europe, not simply Belgium, Netherlands, also Sweden. I even saw some people walking around here with yellow vests.
Oh, really?
Up on 6th Avenue. Yeah, they must have been French tourists, got lost.
Well, you know, I got to say, there is someone I want to mention, and I have no affiliation with this person other than watching him on YouTube. Luke Rudkowski from We Are Change actually went to Paris, put on a gas mask, and went out in the street to interview people and say, hey, what's going on? Give us firsthand, on the ground reporting. And although over the weekend some of the mainstream outlets started talking about it a bit, I didn't see anybody doing it like that. And I mean, Luke Rudkowski, I sent him some money on Super Chat. I think people need to find ways to support these independent journalists and that's not to say that I agree with everything or disagree with everything or whatever. I just think Luke's doing a good job, and if people see an independent journalist like that, I mean, the guy, he's buying a plane ticket to go to Paris, that's not free, staying at a hotel, buying himself food. He's subjecting himself to tear gas, which is poison. I don't want to do that. So this is a big risk. The guy's making a big sacrifice. People really need to support independent journalism, and I'm not talking about goofy liars who sit around in hotel rooms reading off, spouting nonsense, asking for Super Chat, but people who are really going out there, not intimidating witnesses, not going to witnesses' houses to show people their neighborhoods, which seems to be a recurring theme to intimidate witnesses, but people who are trying to get to information really need our support. So I hope people will support We Are Change and Crowdsource the Truth and whoever their favorite source of independent journalism is.
Agreed, very much agreed. So what I think these people in the yellow vests, the Trump supporters, the Bernie supporters, what they all appreciate is a theme we've been trying to hammer home in week after week, twice a week, the idea that the New World Order has worked extremely well for the Uniparty, for the Bush family, for the Clintons, for the Obamas, for people connected to the mainstream established parties, but it has worked horribly for anybody who actually wants to sell his or her labor into the market. When you look at after-tax incomes in the countries where people earn the most money, and you adjust them for the amount of time they now have to spend working, it's not a 40-hour work week anymore, it's probably a 65, 70-hour work week. When you adjust it for that, and you try to adjust for inflation, what you see is that this whole experiment with the New World Order has been a dismal failure for the workers, because workers in the main cannot save money. On the other hand, if you have capital, and I'm beginning to sound like a Marxist here for a second, but I assure you I'm not, but if you have capital and you go from a situation where you were just able to invest your capital, let's say in France, and now instead of investing it just in France and gaining the benefits from building a business out for France, you can build a business out for the world. Suddenly, your ability to make outsized returns is a lot higher in this so-called New World Order, which isn't regulated, because no nation can regulate or wants to regulate, and there certainly is an international body that regulates. So this has been a horrible experiment for 30 years, and I think you're finally beginning to see pent-up grievance go out on the streets, when we hear the Grubers of the world, Professor Gruber, who said Americans were too stupid to understand the benefits of Obamacare, those type of stupid academic elites, self-reinforcing, stupid, entitled academic supposed elites, people are looking and saying, my life isn't any better. My debt's a lot bigger. I don't see opportunities for my kids. They're not working. There's something badly wrong. And instead of listening to let's just do the way we did it before Trump came along, school of thought, people want some real answers here. So Donald has broken the internet. He's done a fair amount of disruption. Recently, Tucker Carlson, who I have met and do like, I think made a pretty bad mistake trying to make the argument that Donald Trump has done absolutely nothing, which I think is, the tax bill alone that he got through, the several Supreme Court justices that he got through who are law and order, reverent for the Constitution, those are major accomplishments. Forget his long list of 200 or 300 accomplishments. So I think Tucker's made a bit of a mistake and could have a rough period here unless he rethinks his views.
Some of the people in the comments are expressing thoughts that I kind of share with them, is that we're getting a little annoyed. Trump needs to do more.
Right.
Sessions was a disaster. Now he brings in this car, all these guys.
Yeah.
We got to drain this damn swamp, Charles. He's got to start prosecuting some people, or he's going to lose even us.
Well, yeah, I hope so. He's got a short window here. George H.W. Bush did not control the House or the Senate during his aborted one term. Look how that worked out well for him.
He didn't control them in the traditional sense, but he had his hands on the levers of the CIA and exerted control.
But he didn't. The Democrats control the House and the Senate. So my point is, though, that you're absolutely right. Shifty Adam Schiff is at the top of Drudge today, already making hay over how the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York may well end up trying to indict Trump, and that Trump, maybe according to Schiff, would face jail time for failures to fill out paperwork properly on his Trump's Federal Election Commission paperwork. But I think what we need to remember here is that inside this country and inside France and inside any major country, an elected leader's highest duty is not to serve a global master, George Soros or anybody else like that. It is, in our case, in the United States, it is to preserve and protect the U.S. Constitution. And all these fancy pants people in both parties, and the ever-Trumpers and the liberals, who want to go and have us forget about that outdated document, the Constitution, instead embrace these globalist themes, they're making bad mistakes. And I think, you think back to just last month, when Donald Trump was over there underneath the Arc de Triomphe with all the other leaders, and Emmanuel Macron was looking down his nose and castigating him for being arrogant and a nationalist. How's that working out for you?
Emmanuel Macron, I heard his approval rating was 18%.
We'll have to call him Emmanuel Macaroon, not Macron, the cookie.
Yeah, he's not my kind of guy at all.
I know. So here we are, December 9th, 2018. We have a big week ahead. Maybe we should go to the next slide just to quickly go through. We have...
well, wait a minute.
No, this is right. So what we often do is we go right to the playlist. And before we do that, I thought I'd pull up another sampling of a small portion of our many shows that we've done. This is our 124th show. A reprobate somehow slipped into the list, gumming up the works, and we've redone it. Jason's redone it.
I don't know how that got in there.
Just gremlins, computer gremlins.
Could be.
But what we tried to do here is put out just a sampling. This is 12 of our, this is 10, less than 10% of our podcasts. Imagine that. 500,000 views, less than 10%.
Wow.
And the average of this, the average of these is an astounding, wow, I would divide it by 12. It's going to be well over 2 hours is the average.
Yeah.
So, and we see that for these, roughly 1 in every 30 people upvote this video. And I think, Jason, you see metrics that the average person does not see. that show that most of the viewers do stay for the entire length of our broadcasts,
Yeah.
which is really something. And I've now had the fortune of checking that out with many competitors. I mean, we really don't compete against NBC and Bloomberg and stuff like that, but I have talked to people at NBC, Bloomberg, Washington Post, the big players. And I run through, they ask me, how should they describe me? And I say, well, I'm a private investor and a writer. And I also do these shows. What shows do you do? And I tell them. And they start looking down their nose at it. And I say, well, I don't know what your metrics are like. Why don't you tell me? Well, we get, 1,000 views on our videos. I say, well, we get 10,000 views within 24 hours. Well, how long are yours? And they probably think I'm going to say, 5 seconds. I say, well, 2 hours, more than 2 hours. And to a person, they all come back, what are you guys doing? How do you do that? And so this is just a sampling of some of the ones, as we know about. We're going to talk about these whistleblowers that are coming forward on Thursday. If you are trying to get smart about the true, the public record, the known public record of the Clinton Foundation and why there are so many problems with the Clinton Foundation, what you need to do is you need to consider watching any one of these. To start with, Exploring the Clinton Business Model was one of our early ones. That's a shorter one. And that does take you through in some depth what we believe to be the essential problems with the Clinton Foundation approach to charity fraud. Walking Tall 3 was one over a year ago, Jason, where you and I and Jan Weinberg were encouraging President Trump, to step it up a notch and really go in full bore. And I think instead of listening to us, I think what Donald Trump did is he listened to the people in the Democratic Party who were telling him that he needed to back off in his approach, because if he backed off, he'd be more apt to get the soccer mom suburban vote, et cetera. And I think instead of doing that, he began to irritate our viewers and other viewers, and he took too long. Had he stepped it up a notch, had he pushed on whoever might have been, to get progress reports on what the hell is going on investigating the Clinton Foundation, had there been indictments, had there been more progress, discernible progress towards actually draining the swamp, the results in the midterms might have been very different.
I agree with that.
And now he's left, with a smoking, I'm sorry to use this image, but with a smoking turd of an election result. I mean, you have the House. We know this idiot Jerry Nadler, what is he? He's going to be chairman of the Justice Committee, House Judiciary Committee, and Shifty Adam Schiff, the Intelligence Committee, and also lack of Intelligence Committee. Yeah. And so we're going to have a spectacle of the House just reporting out. So when the Republicans controlled the House and were trying to have real investigations done of Obama era and even predecessor era problems, the mainstream press could be counted on to stifle, as in All the Family, Edith, stifle. Right. To stifle any inquiry of the Republicans. The reverse will happen now that the Democrats take control, that even the most minor complaint will suddenly be breathless reporting of bombshell this and bombshell that. So anyway, to get yourselves prepared, it's obvious that there probably aren't enough hours in the day for people to watch all this stuff at normal, before the whistleblowers come forward at 2 p.m. on Thursday. Maybe you have to watch it at 78 RPM. Something like that. But
well, that's true. People do have the option, at least on YouTube, of setting it to 1.25 or 1.5 speed. Some people find that helpful to get through more information quickly. Charles, we are having a little technical problem. I'm not sure why, but for some reason we're not going out on Periscope right now. So people can watch on YouTube. We've got the Jason Goodman channel. We've also got Crowdsource The Truth 2, where people can use Super Chat. I mean, it's just a good reminder that people should be, linking with us on as many platforms as they can, because with all of this deplatforming and just regular technical glitches, if there's ever a problem, you want some redundancy there.
Right, exactly. But so this is. These are some, I don't mean to do a disservice to the 90% of the videos that we've done. I try to watch every single one more than once again, just to kind of learn from them. But there's a lot of excellent material here for those people who want to say, and I'm talking about the substantive material, for those people who want to try to argue that there's no there are no details, clearly these are just trolls. These are people who haven't bothered to watch one of our presentations or follow a single link.
Right. You've reminded me of something else, Charles. Trolls. So, because there's one in here right now who's upset that according to him we haven't said anything yet, but these people are free to go. I want to recommend to people that are supporters of the show, people who are supporters of draining the swamp and getting to the facts and doling out justice, anytime you see a troll comment, if you use Super Chat or if you become a sponsor on patreon.com and let that troll know that his comment prompted you to send $1 or $5 or whatever it is to Crowdsource the Truth, we can send a message to these trolls that the harder they work to try to shut this operation down, the more we're going to counter with the opposite of what they want. So if anyone doesn't like what we're saying, they're free to switch off the channel. But if you're going to make the effort of putting a troll comment in there, let's do a little internet jujitsu and turn that into a financial sponsorship of Crowdsource the Truth.
Exactly. So the other thing I would note is we made an executive decision to pitch this show to investigators, to people who are financially numerate, to people who understand the laws, to people who are wondering why the United States government has not done anything yet to bring these charity fraudsters to justice, both under the Bush administration, the Obama administration, now in the Trump administration. So we're not trying to pitch this to the general audience, and we appreciate those of you who may not have the financial background or legal background to grasp what we're talking about. That's why we provide the links that we provide, so that if you want to educate yourselves or ask a friend to explain in depth, some of the conclusions we reach, you have the resources before you at your fingertips and all these slide presentations which are free. So there's a lot of information out here, and I can say that a lot of investigators around the world are following this and are very encouraged by the revelations last week that at last there are going to be public hearings in Congress on Thursday, barring unforeseen events between now and Thursday.
Maybe, yeah.
So if we go to the next page, we have, this is our standard disclaimer, and I know, Jason, you may not have had a chance to put up the Crowdsource the Truth page, but I believe I'll scoop you a little bit and just say that I think the number of subscribers that you have is steadily climbing, thankfully.
It's interesting, Charles, because it has been steadily climbing. I think that there was particular interest in a couple of videos that had been done recently. Before we go to the playlist, let's just take a look at that for a second. And people who are watching on Crowdsource the Truth 2 right now, I had made an error with the initial link. So we are live on both channels, and it's interesting. Okay, it's moving a little bit now, 76,000. It was stuck at 185 for quite a while. It had gotten into a good groove where it was going up by, sort of every time I would look at it, another 10 or 20 subscribers. I think people were responding very well to a lot of the videos that I've been doing with David Hawkins, talking about how carbon credits are a scam, and specifically when Donald Trump has said global warming or climate change is a scam, on its face that sounds like a provocative comment, but when David goes into the science of correlating global temperature with carbon dioxide, the fact that carbon dioxide is a gas that we naturally produce by exhaling and that trees consume and that it's a fertilizer gas, he really goes into great detail explaining why it's a scam. We also did this piece with Captain Dan Hanley and Scott Bennett talking about Dov Zakheim, an individual that Scott has some firsthand experience with. So been a lot of good videos. Of course, the Bill Binney video that exposes Robert Mueller's basically standard operating procedure of entrapping people has caused huge growth in subscribership.
That's great. So you're up at above 76,000 subscribers, which is fantastic. And that's just your YouTube subscribers. You've got other people who regularly tune in to other things. And if we can just go back to the
Sure. People, that's just on the main channel. We've also got 9.5 thousand on Crowdsource The Truth too. So there's a lot of different ways people can get to the show.
So for the new people, what we want to make sure you understand, this is not simply a lecture. This is an effort to get you energized, motivated, to reach out to your friends and neighbors, ask them to watch the show, ask them to get engaged, and particularly this week as we grow to learn just how massive this fraud is, bigger than Madoff by far. Madoff fraud roughly is 50 billion. We think this fraud is all in with all its affiliates over 100 billion. So this is an opportunity for you, if you really get interested, to contact your congressperson, contact your senator, contact people who represent you in state government and local government, contact people who may have made gifts or thinking about making gifts in this giving season, and say, don't give a dime to the Clinton Foundation. It's a fraud. And don't go ahead and take a tax deduction this year for giving a contribution, because it's very possible in the coming weeks and months that the government may ultimately decide it was a fraud, and therefore your tax deductions would not actually be good to go, writing them off against your personal income. So what we did here, or what we do, is we try to provide links to the primary sources that we use, and you'll see some of those. We added here Real Donald Trump's Twitter handle, and I did that just because he's breaking the internet. I think, Jason, we ought to check and see if he's had anything new to say.
Absolutely. Real Donald Trump on Twitter. Let's check it out. There's a lot of people saying a lot of stuff on Twitter, Charles.
They are. And I love it, yeah. On 245 occasions, former FBI Director Comey told House investigators, that's the second one here. He didn't know, didn't recall, or couldn't remember things when asked. I mean, you think about this, Jason. Our friend Dr. Corsi, he volunteers to help, right? FBI agents show up with a subpoena. He says, okay, I'll help. And he gives them devices, he gives them passwords, he gives them access to social media and all that kind of stuff. And then they sit him down, a 72-year-old guy, not for 6 hours in front of Congress, but for 40 hours or 50
Crazy.
Hours. And they threaten him with a lifetime in jail because maybe it can be argued that he lied. Whereas here, Comey, who used to run, he didn't run the CRS Department of Government, can't remember shit. He ran the FBI.
Where did you hear about that?
He ran the Federal Bureau of Investigation. How can you go before Congress and say, well, on one of the most controversial decisions, has to be absolutely one of the most controversial decisions ever, to go having maybe cleared Hillary Clinton in a half-assed investigation that was not done according, as far as I can tell, to proper FBI procedures, which are outlined in the Domestic Operations Guide that you can find on the FBI Vault file. It's a public document. Not following protocols with Hillary, they clear her, and then they make a decision, who knows when, perhaps before they clear Hillary, I would argue, maybe going as far back as 2015, they make a decision, hey, let's target Trump. And you can't remember any of that? While you were FBI director? I mean, you're supposed to be the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You can't remember, you don't recall?
He didn't even know that Anthony Weiner was married to Huma Abedin.
Right.
So, what kind of investigation was this moron doing?
Well, actually, Paul Sperry, who's a very good investigative reporter, just had something out where Comey apparently lied to Congress again, because he claimed in this recent setting that he hadn't been briefed on the investigation into the laptop and emails, which began sometime in September, and went to there was a search warrant sworn out late in October. He claimed to Congress that he hadn't been aware of any of that stuff when a whole bunch of emails are already out in the public domain saying, we're demonstrating that Comey absolutely knew about it. He was intersecting via email with many of his staff. So the guy's he's a proven liar.
Wow. So I guess, lying on the regular to Congress is okay if you're James Comey. It's only a problem if you're Dr. Corsi
Exactly.
or Michael Cohen, and I mean, again, it's openly displayed how these guys.
It's a double standard.
It's worse than a double standard. A double standard sounds kind of like not fair. This is how they entrap people, and it's vicious, fatal lawfare. Here's our playlist, Charles, for anybody who's wanting to review your material and make the popcorn and sit down and start getting ready for all these hearings. I hope that whistleblower hearing will be on C-SPAN or something so people can watch it. But of course, you can go and view all of the 120. What's the total number here?
It's 123 we've done. This is the 124th.
It's quite a lot, Charles. That's
Although
great.
I think Terminate Her was not the most recent one.
Did we do one after that?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I should add that.
So maybe this is 125.
Huh. That may well be.
We're doing so many, we're getting kind of cavalier about it.
Terminator, what? You're right. The Terminator wasn't the last one.
It was. What was the last one?
Yeah, we'll add it right now. It would have been. People, I'm sure, in the chat will recall probably better than we do, but there's just so much evidence that you've piled on, Charles. It's almost hard to recall. But
how do you rustle them up?
you just say add video, and if it wants to cooperate, we can just go in here and. Yes,
yeah, it's a bad globalist world. So this is the 125th.
125. Sorry, Charles. I didn't mean to shortchange the effort.
That's all right.
It's a lot of videos we've done.
Especially when you consider the average length.
Exactly.
So you got to hit what, load more?
Yeah, boy, it's a whole process here. Okay, there we go. Move that to the top, and then now people can have the full list.
The full panoply.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that I've said it many times, but even just one of these videos could be taken, essentially transcribed, and you've got so much evidence of criminality, there's no need to look any further. It's a one-stop subpoena shop.
Well, again, this is all taken from the public domain, and if you had, we wouldn't want to use whoever was loyal to Dopey James Comey. You don't want to use any of them. But if you have some people, probably line people in the FBI, maybe 5 to 10 years in.
Lion people?
No, line, L-I-N-E, not lion.
L-Y.
Who are law and order, interested in, really getting to the bottom of this. You take those people and back up a truck unannounced. I mean, the same way that 2 FBI agents showed up at Jerry Corsi's house with a subpoena, I would hope that a bunch of FBI agents have already showed up at Andrew Kessel's house and many of the trustees of the Clinton Foundation and back the truck up to the foundation and say,
back the truck up
and say, late, like 7 o'clock in the morning, and show up, go to the Clinton library and hit the doorbell and roust the people out of the pool up on the, they're not going to be in the pool in December, but get them out of the massage parlor and figure out, get custody and control of the bank records and the emails and the letters and everything else from the inside. You ought to be able to put a lay-down case together. You should have done this long ago.
I would think so. It's also worth reminding people that they can follow you on Twitter, Charles. You're tweeting a lot of this information, and people can stay on top of it by following you at Charles Ortel. How's the 34K, is that up?
Sure. Yeah,
there you go.
It's
it was
beginning to climb again.
So it seems to be back.
And just for fun, I sent this to you, Jason, and I just put this up here so it'd be easy for you to do it. Eric Bolling has just tweeted this YouTube video, which is very funny. It's they take the second presidential debate and then this controversial song, "Baby It's Cold Outside." They put the lyrics for.
It's amazing that that's controversial. They want to go back now. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is controversial because they're saying that I guess because the reindeer games are not letting him play because he has a red nose.
It's just.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is about overcoming adversity and finding yourself and making friends with people who see you for who you are.
It's a song and it's a cartoon. I mean, it's like, come on, get over it.
I thought it's a good life lesson for kids that there's going to be people who make fun of you because of the way you look or because of your religion or your race. But when you find your true friends like Hermie the elf and Yukon Cornelius.
But I mean, imagine how much fun you could have, perish the thought that you might do this, but where you would juxtapose a song like that with some of these rap songs that you see people, with the headphones on, walking down the street like, military men, and it's, all these, I won't use the curse words, all the curse words, and
they're winning
kill this and do this and that, this woman and that one. You embrace that kind of stuff, but you can't listen to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Oh, he's racist.
I mean, yeah, unlike
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Kill the police and F the police and Kathy Griffin with Donald Trump's severed head.
Absolutely. People can also follow Crowdsource the Truth on Twitter, and I would encourage people to do it because, again, if there's ever a problem or anything, we want to have all these different methods of getting the information out. I'm not sure why we're not on Periscope right now. People can usually get to the Periscope broadcasts just by clicking on it through Twitter. For some reason, I don't know. I'll have to look at that after the show as to why it's not going on Periscope. But thank you for all of our followers on Periscope and elsewhere.
Very good. So if we go back into the slides, we'll start here.
Yeah.
So
did we give our disclaimer?
We put it up there.
Okay.
James Comey's testimony before the House was really embarrassing. First of all, after he gave his testimony, and here we have a link to the full transcript, he was, in his know-it-all way, towering over the press, answering questions, and he tried to be one of the cool kids, and he said, shaking his head, and he said, "Can you believe it? They were asking me about Hillary Clinton's emails. God forbid." I mean,
wow.
I mean, the nerve of this guy, the nerve of him. I mean, the Hillary Clinton email situation should have been one of the first things that he looked into on September 4th, 2013, when he replaced Robert Mueller as head of the FBI. Hillary Clinton at that point still had custody and control over a large amount of extraordinarily valuable government property from all the email communications of she and her staff with world leaders, with donors, with foreign and domestic potential donors to her campaign, contact information to the top aides and the insiders and all these. This is enormously valuable information. I mean, think about Facebook's monitoring information about some troll, and Twitter some troll. Here, Hillary Clinton walks off the premises with the leader of China, every major country, their leaders, their peccadillos, their information, whatever, the classified information, all this kind of stuff, and she still probably has that in her orbit. The Clintons still probably have that, and Comey's trying to make light of the fact that Republicans are saying, what the hell was going on here?
He's revealing their whole entire MO here, Charles, is that this is a huge deal.
Right.
This is criminal activity, and the fact that he didn't investigate it and bring it to the fore when he should have implicates him in the cover-up. So this is what they do. They're just repeating the lie. They're repeating the fake story, just as they are with the Russia thing. They repeat it again and again and again, despite the fact that there's no basis for what he's saying. He's just trying to get public opinion in his favor. I do want to thank Alberto Saldana sending $49.99 on the Super Chat. Very generous.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
So if you look here, this is interesting to see. This thing, which came out on Saturday at 5:50 in the afternoon, got 287 shares. Okay, if we go back into the slide.
That's not a lot.
Well, when you see by comparison, and we're not going to be careful here that we do not want to reveal the names of these people, but
I'm not going to say
if we hit this link, all right, this is a story that, as you like to say, lit the internet on fire. Look at the number of shares, 92,800.
Oh, yeah.
Compared to 287.
Well, we should clarify who made this statement, "I know where the bodies are buried." This isn't some unknown whistleblower.
Yeah, this is the chief financial officer in name only of
It's Kessel, right?
Andrew M. Kessel, yeah, of the Clinton Foundation. And this is a story that first came out, came out and then it was repurposed in the morning of the 8th, yesterday morning at 9:28. It has over 1.2 million views. And at this count, 2 of the 3 whistleblowers who have been working with the Hill's John Solomon are scheduled to appear before Mark Meadows' committee 2 p.m. on Thursday, I believe in the Rayburn building. It's a matter of public record. If you just Google Mark Meadows, whistleblower, Rayburn, you should get it. So I've seen the link already. I just didn't put it in the presentation. And this is a lengthy piece. John Solomon, who I know well, has had the luxury with his staff of going over the whistleblower revelations. It's 6,000 pages. It's been inaccurately reported in Fox for some reason that the whistleblowers are just turning over hundreds of pages. They're turning over 6,000 pages, and Solomon and his team of colleagues has had a lot of time to go over this information, cross-check it, understand its significance, and I would look for more stories to come out imminently through the course of the week, not just from John on his whistleblowers, but also from another friend, Richard Pollack, who has been working with Dean, I want to call him Dean Cain, that can't be his name.
Dennis Cain.
Dennis Cain, yeah, Superman.
Dean Cain. You know, Charles, I don't know why so many guests that I have on hold Fox in this high regard. I see them as just another corporate-owned, advertiser-driven news cesspool that just basically acknowledged, hey, you know what, there's people on the right side of politics who we should cater to and lie to, but I don't think Fox is doing any wonderful service. There are people on there who I like, but we've seen at key moments when they called the election in favor of the Democrats. I mean, again, this is kind of the nature of a limited hangout where they gain people's trust and then slip in the lie at the key moment. I really think the only way to keep news honest is for it to be viewer sponsored, so that the sponsors know they're the ones whose interest, and by distributing it over a large number of sponsors rather than one gigantic sponsor coming in for 100,000 or 100 million or whatever the number, lots of micro sponsorships. It's the way the news should be done.
I agree. I would say that, so you're saying Fox is in the henhouse, in other words.
Exactly.
But what I personally, one of the things that troubles me about Fox, I agree with you. There's some very strong investigative.
Thomas Tyson agrees with you. He says Fox has been guarding the henhouse for 30 years.
So there's some very strong investigative journalists at Fox, and in particular, there's some very strong people behind the scenes at Fox, the researchers and producers and deputy producers, stuff like that, who really do very good work. But their format, you know, I went and sat down with them in 2000, I want to say 15, it might have been, and, you know, explaining the magnitude of this scandal and why I felt it was important. And they immediately got it, the top long feature producer. But they were just saying, my God, this is going to, how do we put this on television? It's going to take so much time and that's why I was so happy to meet you and do it this way, because in reality, to tell this story, even if you get a chance with Mark Levin on his hour-long show to do what we're doing, you have to cut at Fox. You've got to cut to commercial, you've got to cut to this, you've got to cut to that. And these panel formats where you have, just take 2, I mean, forget 4, but take 2 guests, where you got to have one guest and another guest, and nobody really gets that much time, and the anchor has to break in, and the next thing you cut to the Cialis commercial, then the Pence commercial, then the, I don't know the My Pillow commercial, and
you've got your panel right there, Charles.
I know. And
They're
she's looking grumpier and grumpier, I must say. And Donald Trump's hair is on fire.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that we have that Donald Trump there as a tribute to the president, not as a criticism. We like Trump.
Very much. So anyway, if we go back into the slide for a sec, just to say something about the whistleblower testimony, this is not, I will reveal, I'm not going to say their names, I do know who these people are. And these are, I will say to the audience, and I'll swear on this, that these are American patriots. These are hardworking people who did not need to spend the amount of time that they have spent at their own expense going into this, diving into minutia, taking the considerable risks that they're taking. but they feel passionately that charity fraud is a disaster, and particularly charity fraud involving a former president, an aspiring president, turning the business of charity fraud, which should be nonprofit, into the Bonnie and Clyde Clinton approach, is something that cannot let stand. And we already see the Obama family trying to emulate the Clintons, and to a lesser extent, the Bush is doing it. Yeah. So we've got to get off this idea that we're going to have dynastic political families use charities, particularly charities operating internationally like the Clinton one does, and now the Obama, where they're not regulated. We've got to get off that drill, and we've got to go and use this example during the peak giving season, which we're in right now. You're going to see appeal after appeal. On the Clinton Foundation website, they're already saying the Clinton family will double your donation. Yeah, right. So this is a moment to stand up, Mr. Trump and others this week. I hope he takes note of the whistleblowers and what they have to say. I hope he takes note of what John Solomon is doing and writing about, and Richard Pollack. And I hope there's keen interest through the week in where we are, because the rubber is meeting the road here. Now, the Clinton Foundation defense is completely laughable. We had Doug White on, who was a co-founder of Charity Navigator. That's The Wounded Warrior Princess, or whatever is the episode. Yeah. But this is hysterical. This is the defense they did to John Solomon's initial story. Charity evaluators agree on Clinton Foundation programs are great. Now look at the replies, Jason.
Oh, I love the replies. I mean, yeah.
Is this mean tweets or something?
Kind of, but almost all of them are, they say, hey, liberals, even more proof Hillary broke the law a lot. Lock her up. Not bad for a 501 that's supposed to build a presidential library. Oh wait, the library is already built. This
nice
is a great meme of Hillary.
Nice pick.
The orange there.
This is laughing my ass off, shysters.
Oh boy, that's...
Oh no, that's bad.
I did not know that was on there.
Take it.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff that you could see on Twitter, but
What's
I mean...
that?
I don't know, someone looking skeptical, I guess. Here's Bob Ross painting Hillary Clinton in jail. I mean, these are being updated. I didn't see any of these the last time we looked at it, but, oh, whoa. Someone's taken the name John Glasgow.
We know who that is, actually.
Oh, I didn't know who that was.
It's just, there's not that's a great picture. What's that from?
A lot of cynical people responding to that tweet there, Charles.
Twitter, this is Twitter at its best. But I mean, you look at this, I don't see, I mean, I think they must have, thought this was going to be a great defense, and then they put it up there, and then probably somebody said, Chelsea said, well, how are we doing on Twitter? How's the defense going? Well, Ms. Mavinsky, how are your kids?
It's interesting to see how this court of public opinion is being utilized. I mean, again, I think a lot of what Bob Mueller is doing right now is, the midterms are over, they're looking towards 2020 election. Irrespective of the law, justice, what was or was not done, if they can keep hammering on this message that Donald Trump did something wrong, Donald Trump could go to jail, that hurts his ability to win in 2020. It's very much the same exact thing that's happening with the people that, want to smear me on YouTube. They just keep pushing the same story absent of any evidence, and there's a new push that they're onto this week. So anti-trolling measures are the best.
Got to put up the defenses.
Remedy.
Yeah. I've done a lot of interviews with, and I put it in caps here, the great Ekaterina Bainova. If we hit this, and really the way we do them is she sends me questions, and I try to answer them, and then she also then weaves in additional commentary and thoughts. She's by training actually an historian. She's not, I think she's either an independent contractor, she's not based in Moscow, she's based in a city I can't pronounce the name of, big city. But I think this may have been our 70th interview, that order of magnitude, and she follows things very closely in some depth, and I'd encourage people to take a look at this. I gave up and I sat down with Maggie Haberman, and I went back through my notes in December of 2015, tried to get her interested. Not interested. Wall Street Journal, they just want to go, the Mueller, Peter Smith collusion delusion route. They don't want to look at what could be a great story. I mean, this is twice the size of the Madoff fraud, a former president, aspiring president. It's all math, it's all reports, it's right up, and the Wall Street Journal should be concentrating on things that relate to finance, but no, they don't want to do it. So in contrast, here we see a Russian, admittedly government-supported organization allowing somebody who is not an employee but an independent contractor to express her opinions in league with me. And we've done these 70 reports. And,
that's great.
You know, and these do get a lot of attention outside the United States, not so much in the United States.
Well, articles related to you, I think people are interested in reading about, and it's interesting to see who is busily trying to discredit these organizations. Whether it's Sputnik, Fox, whatever it is, I think that there's the individual reporters that make up the organization, and then there's the organization itself that are not necessarily all thinking the same things.
I want to give a shout out to the great Biljana Martinovsky. I introduced her to Katrina, who was also doing regular interviews with Jan. I think that's the same one.
Yeah, why did that happen?
It's this one here. Below.
Oh, sorry.
We've done several shows with Biljana. We've got to do a few more. Still, the government in Sweden has not been put together following the election.
Really?
Still not together. And this is an interview that Katrina did with Biljana. I believe more are coming.
Well, of course, Charles, you introduced me to Biljana, and now I've been to Sweden where I met with her and learned quite a lot about how democratic socialism, according to her and other Swedes, have destroyed that country. So that's, again, part of the whole crowdsource the truth method. I didn't know anything about Sweden, and I certainly didn't know Biljana, but now we all know a little more about it.
Yeah, the one thing I will tell you about Sweden, the best time to go to Sweden, believe it or not, is the winter.
Why?
Because that's when people really appreciate your coming. Most people don't go
cold
there. And in the winter, I don't mind. You can always, it's very easy to get warm, but in the heat, it's not so easy to cool down when you're outside.
You know, I'll tell you a story about the first time I went to Sweden, Charles. I've told a lot of people that at one point I was the CEO of a micro-aerial cinematography company called Aerocine. It started actually before I got involved, and the original aircraft was purchased in Sweden, and the two original owners of that company decided to actually go to Ukraine and do a video over the Chernobyl nuclear reactor. This is before I got involved in the company. But they got into a dispute with the Swedish manufacturer, and the helicopter failed. So when I joined that company, they had no working helicopter. I had to go to Sweden and reestablish the relationship with the manufacturer to get that helicopter repaired and back in the sky. And then I got them to change the name of the company to Aerocine. And the rest is history that's being distorted by some people who would perpetrate falsehoods on the internet in an effort to damage crowdsource the truth.
Sorry to hear that. Well, so anyway, this is a great article by Biljana. I encourage people to follow what's going on in Sweden. We have this report from PJ Media here that the riots in France are spreading.
Belgium, I heard.
Yeah, Belgium and the Netherlands. And it makes sense. I think what's really going on in these socialist economies, and to a certain extent here in New York City, I won't reveal how I know this, but I was in the local supermarket where I go, and it's a reasonably fancy neighborhood. I happened to notice that the person ahead of me was using food stamps.
Whoa.
So after they left, I asked the checkout person who knows me, I said, what would you say, what percentage of all people in the supermarket use food stamps? And they said 30 to 35%.
Wow.
And then I went to the manager because I was shocked it was that high, and I said, could this be right? And our family's been in that neighborhood for a long time, for more than almost 60 years actually.
Wow.
And so, I know the people reasonably well at the store. And I think a trick that happens in Europe, and where there's a heavy social safety net that extends far beyond taking care of the poorest of the poor, what you have is people taking their benefits and then operating in the cash economy as well. So they're getting benefits from the government, claiming an income that's actually lower than their real income because they're making a lot of money or a fair amount of money in cash on the side. And so the true situation, the true level of inequality is not captured by the government statistics. I see that in our statistics as well, the Consumer Expenditure Survey. But nonetheless, that said, people are reacting across Europe, and I think they're going to react even more in the United States, especially when we hear that Nancy Pelosi is living the life of the multi-millionaires or billionaires.
Maybe she could hire a Chinese spy too.
Exactly, yeah, like Dianne Feinstein. But the elites are very happy with the status quo because it's, as I said earlier, it's possible.
They control it.
Well, it's more that the ventures that they get involved in have Facebook-style payoffs. I mean, if you hit it out of the park, you're going to go create a startup company, and it might end up being worth $200 billion. So it's far better than Powerball, and it's far easier to win than in Powerball. So the elites love unregulated globalism, but the masses across the world, where wages are high, don't like it, and they're standing up. And Ocasio-Cortez and Sanders and others may believe that that slogans are going to win them an election in 2020, but I think the reverse is true. I think you're going to begin to see, in an absence of real progress, you're going to see more and more protests here. And now we have, this guy is a straight-up fool, Max Boot. And I saw Tucker eviscerate him. When he was in evisceration mode. But now Max Boot and others are trying to promote the idea that Putin and Trump have conspired to instigate these riots in France with the yellow vests. I mean, come on. Come the F on. That is really dumb, right? That is really freaking dumb. And it is certainly not happening. It's not like the Max Boot and the other elitists all believe that, without their wisdom, without the influence.
This guy's a CFR fellow.
I know. Without their wisdom and without the guidance of Max Boot and others, ordinary people wouldn't know what to do. So of course, if this is happening, it's all because Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin get together on their hotline and say, all right, which country shall we destabilize next? You did a great job in America in 2016. Let's work on it in France. Why don't Macron dissed me in the recent meeting there, so let's pull his pants down, and make Paris burn. That's not what happened, Max. Get a life. Get a freaking
I didn't
life.
see CNN people on the streets of Paris with Luke Rudowski from We Are Change, so I don't know. I mean, all you got to do is look at this guy's Twitter page here, Charles. He's basically telling us that he is a CFR fellow. I remain firmly convinced that the CFR is where the CIA goes to meet with their journalist friends, let's call them. He's a WAPO columnist. We know the Washington Post is spewing CIA propaganda. And he's a CNN analyst. So at the risk of being crude, I would remind people that boot is a euphemism for vomit. So I don't know where this guy got his name, but it seems appropriate. Oh, and he's quoting Joe Scarborough. I wonder, where's Joe Scarborough's intern? Why don't we have an investigation into that? These guys disgust me, Charles.
I know. So if we go back into the slides here.
Yeah, I was just ranting on
that's
Max
okay.
Boot.
So we do have some good news, Jason. The famed author of Pow Wow Chow is never going to be president. This from this Boston Herald piece.
Pow Wow Chow. What was that again?
Pow Wow Chow was the cookbook that Elizabeth Warren put together.
Did she write that? Is that what it was called?
Yes.
And that's not offensive?
I know. It's offensive on many levels.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is a racist, but Pow Wow Chow is okay.
And the basic thing about Pow Wow Chow is, it turns out, she lifted a bunch of the recipes from like the Waldorf Astoria and all sorts of other stuff. And anyway, Howie Carr, who's this Boston-based columnist, points out that here she is trying to claim that she never benefited trading on her name. And then Carr looks through the credentials of all the law school professors at Harvard Law School. And her credentials, there are many fine people who come out of schools that are not top in theory rated, but she's the only full professor, or was the only full professor at Harvard Law School from non-Ivy League and way below Ivy League university and law school. And she's trying to argue that she didn't benefit from, at a moment in time where Harvard Law School was under attack for being too white male-ish and not having any diversity, she didn't benefit from saying, you know what, I'm an Indian, I'm a Cherokee, I've got high cheekbones, or at least my grandfather did.
Pow Wow Chow.
And I'm the author of Pow Wow Chow.
I mean, that's just so like,
and I want to be president of the United
States.
States.
Like me writing a book called Jewy Food. Like, who would do that? It's just so stupid.
I know. It's a little silly. So this though is good news. That I don't think we'll
Good news, Elizabeth Warren, still a dope.
Right. And in the bad news department, we have Jeffrey Epstein back in the news.
Bad news that they let him go, basically. They wouldn't allow the victims to speak, right?
Right, and it's very strange here. This Dershowitz. This is interesting that there's this big typo in the headline. That does happen. Still, I think it means advising, not avising.
Who is this website here?
I don't even know. But
he's avising. He's renting cars for them.
But Epstein's back in the news, and I think fairly so. One really needs to understand how Epstein actually acquired his billions, if he in fact did so, and whether he somehow managed to get off, whether Mueller allowed Epstein, when Mueller was head of the FBI, to get, to cop to state level charges and get off of or stop the FBI from going down the real trail in 2007 of what Epstein was doing with people like Bill and Hillary Clinton and Alan Dershowitz, who apparently was also somebody, a visitor at Epstein Island.
But wasn't he like representing one of the victims or keeping the victims quiet? What was Alan Dershowitz?
Yeah, he was representing one of the victims, and that victim is very unhappy with Alan Dershowitz because the victim claimed that Alan Dershowitz didn't fight as hard as he should have for the benefit of the victim.
There was an interesting story on True Pundit just the other day where they had a video interview with a woman who came forward as being victimized by Jeffrey Epstein, and who was that, I think, Israeli woman who was his assistant?
Oh, yeah, I know who you mean. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't see it right now, but people can search True Pundit for this interview. The girl was talking about how when she was underage, she was basically like...
Virginia Roberts, is it? I think it is.
I don't remember her name, but it was a blonde woman who's in her 30s
yeah,
or so.
Virginia
now.
Roberts. Her maiden name was Giuffre, something like that last name.
But she gives pretty compelling testimony about how she was trained to be a sex slave, basically, and that how she was used to bring in other girls, and sounds very much like this Nexium cult where I don't understand how they train people to do this stuff, but I guess it's, that's what being a cult leader is.
Yeah, something I don't want to do.
No.
But, and then in the, I won't use the phrase, spell it out for you, but in the WTF department, we have, apparently there's something really weird going on with the International Space Station.
What kind of weird?
That there's some orb, you see this orb, that gets close to the space station, then the live feed cuts out.
Huh, wow.
Yeah.
Live feed cuts out again.
But this is an old story. Oh, no, it's not. It's December 7th. They do it European approach.
There's a lot of people who are skeptical about space. I know that people think that, I don't know, it's all fake. I'm not sure what to think. I'm open to hearing any theory, but I tend to believe that we have been to space, and I think there are human artifacts on the moon. So then, people who say we've never been to the moon, I don't know. We've got to evaluate both sides of that argument.
Of course we've been to the moon, but
people are going to be up in arms now. But
that's good.
I don't care about the popular vote about what people think. I mean, we know we have GPS satellites. There are people who watch this show who think the Earth is flat. I don't agree with that. But
it isn't?
I don't think it's flat. But it's interesting. Many people know that I used to use RED cameras from the RED Digital Cinema Company. And sometime in 2016 or 2017, there was a pretty huge deal made among the RED camera user community that RED was supplying cameras to the International Space Station. And it wasn't just a marketing thing. The red cameras are like the highest resolution. And so, I mean, the notion that we're now seeing things that we haven't seen before, I wonder if that's coming from the red camera and also the live feed cutting out. I mean,
Could just be electronic problem.
it could be some kind of interference from this thing, whatever it is. If it is natural phenomenon in space, an alien craft, why wouldn't it just destroy the ISS right away if it was, you know?
Who knows?
It's interesting to monitor and see.
And so now for the focus on the Clinton Foundation, if we go to the next slide.
A lot of chit chat today, Charles.
That's all right.
Sorry about that. Oops.
So when we talk about the Clinton Foundation, we put this up before, but one of our most loyal friends had wanted to get his paws on a list of all the U.S. allies of the Clinton Foundation. And this excludes many other allied enterprises outside the United States. But for people who are trying to understand what we're talking about when we talk about the Clinton Charity Fraud Network, it is a large network of U.S. supposed tax-exempt entities working together in certain cases, funding the main entity, I would argue illegally in other cases, not disclosing related party transactions, not complying with state, federal, and foreign laws in the way they report, not organized lawfully, not operated lawfully. And you can see, to understand what I'm talking about, you've actually got to go into the file and you've got to pull up, try to find reports that should exist for all these, and you'll find out in some cases they do, in other cases they don't, and that's just not right. If a tax-exempt entity was created and was authorized by the IRS, you're supposed to get, any member of the public is supposed to be able to figure out what actually the F happened with it. And so for people who are interested, particularly investigators who are preparing for this set of hearings on Thursday, you better make sure before the whistleblowers get there that you've done your homework and that you understand it's not just this Bill Hillary and Chelsea Clinton Foundation, it's a whole network of things that has not complied with applicable laws and therefore is boldly in defiance and violation of many criminal, and is vulnerable to criminal prosecution should people get off their, I'll use the phrase, tookus, as opposed to what I'd like to say, and actually get to work and investigate, prosecute, win indictments, convict, and incarcerate people responsible for prosecuting this large charity fraud, set of charity frauds. If we go to the next page. Okay. This is a good link here to start with. It's good because the American Thinker, I write for them from time to time. Thomas Lifson runs it. He's very good. Ed Timberlake is somebody who wrote that book we talked about in our last broadcast, The Year of the Rat. And I like Ed's work, but in this case, he's made a major error. He talks here about the requirement to win a conviction for charity fraud, you have to prove intent. And we're going to demonstrate that that's absolutely wrong. You have to check state by state.
There's a lot of people putting out a lot of wrong information about charity fraud, and just like James Comey, they think that the more they say it, the closer it becomes to being true.
Well, this guy is good, and he probably hadn't looked down into the level of specificity state by state. Maybe he was just looking at federal statutes or whatever. But on state solicitation laws, particularly in New York, but in many other states, you absolutely do not have to prove intent to prove fraud. We're going to show you chapter and verse on it. If we go back into the slide here, we've excerpted certain information here. The Attorney General, in theory, it doesn't say can accept. It says will not accept any registration and or filing unless all of the documents and fees required by law and these regulations have been submitted and paid. I can tell you that the New York State Attorney General has accepted documents from some of the Clinton Foundation's entities that are absolutely not complete, and therefore the Attorney General needs to be investigated, in my view. Why would the Attorney General of the state of New York say to Donald Trump's charities, we're going to sue the hell out of you?
Well, isn't he being investigated
right.
for some sexual stuff?
No, it's not that. He's being investigated for the Trump Foundation, Donald Trump.
No, I'm saying the Attorney General is
that person's gone.
So the new Attorney General
is just brand new. I mean, this woman,
What is her name again?
I don't really remember her name.
So her first thing she did was to start investigating Trump.
Well, actually, it was Schneiderman, the guy who was being sued for sexual stuff
Right.
and had to leave. Yeah, he started it, and he hates Trump. And then the acting person, Barbara Underwood, followed. But my point here is that under New York law, and we'll see what these whistleblowers, who the whistleblowers have reported the Clinton Foundation frauds to, which entities across the country and which states. But under New York law, you can't do what the Attorney General has done since 1998,
Wow.
and that is to accept incomplete documents that don't include audits consistent, with American requirements for audits. And this also says any person who swears falsely to any document required by this chapter to be signed under penalties may be guilty of a crime under the New York Penal Code. And every document that the Clinton Foundation has submitted, the people who signed it swore falsely, as is evident from any cursory look through the public record. So then if we could just go down a little bit further here, Jason. This is an excerpt from a lengthy body of information, but it clearly states, under New York law, the Attorney General does not need to establish that fraud is intentional. If you look here, under subdivision 12 of section 63 of this chapter, to establish fraud, neither intent to defraud nor injury need be shown. Crystal effing clear. Crystal clear. And if we look here, if we hit this link, Jason, and then go to section 172D, which you got to scroll down a little bit. 172 there. Not so quick. 172. A little bit further up. A down.
172A.
Down.
C. Where's D?
No, it's further down. It's
This
still.
way?
It's still part of it. 172.
Oh,
B.
I see B.
Yeah, and then still down.
A lot of words here, Charles.
Yeah, I know. There are no. Yeah. See, New York law is better thought out and stricter, I think, than. Here we go. C. It's after. It's going to be after this page.
There it is.
Here we go. Okay, stop here, please. Prohibited activity. You can't make any material statement which is untrue. Of course, that's all they do. You can't engage in any fraud. That's the thing I lifted.
God damn it.
If you keep going down here to 3, you can't use or intend to use false or materially misleading advertising or promotional material. That's in the public domain right now. Here, this is very important. You can't fail to apply contributions in a manner substantially consistent with the solicitation or the registration. In other words, you can't take money to build a presidential library and instead use it for travel expenses or fancy living or Chelsea's wedding or apartment or whatever. You can't do that.
Right.
You can't enter into a contract with a professional fundraiser that is basically not right, and on and on and on. So they cover many, many things under New York law that the Clinton Foundation has regularly done from inception in 1988 to the present. Right? This isn't a case of, well, maybe I just slipped on a banana peel and because of that, I'm guilty of littering. I mean, this thing has always been engaged in boldly fraudulent activities, operating from secret offices. We showcased one at 77 Water. We haven't been up to 125th Street yet. They never registered that office properly. They've probably been doing work in their home in Chappaqua, and now 2 homes there. They've never registered those properly. They've never registered their additional affiliates around the world, which you have to do, or what those affiliates are supposed to do. They never provided legally compliant audits. So it's just everything that this thing has done in New York is wrong. And the question should be, what the hell is the reason that the New York State has never done anything about it? I think the answer is obvious, that the electoral college math is such that New York you want to control, California you want to control,
Right.
the states that have Florida, et cetera. And the Democrats have long felt, we control these 2 states, we can't jeopardize an electoral college mission by going after somebody like the Clintons, who are so powerful, or the Obamas, who are so powerful, because if we make an issue in Illinois or California and New York about this, then suddenly the wider public's going to wake up and say, wait a minute, this is crooked as heck. So here, in November 2015, I did a piece on my site, which I only recently remembered to look back at. If we just hit that link. For those who are interested in, the people who complain about there not being enough detail on the site have not been on the site. If we go down the page here, you'll see there's I think it's a 30-page document. This went out on November 5th, 2015. Incredible amount of detail on accounting rules that pertain to fraud and other issues, and how does this apply to the Clinton Foundation. The situation regarding the Clinton Foundation and its breaking regulations and laws has only gotten more serious since November 5th, 2015. They've covered themselves in Chelsea Clinton's specialty in their public record. I was pounding the table saying, you've got to refile, you've got to refile. They said they weren't going to refile, and they refiled 11 days after this memo, which is, I think, 29 pages long, so you don't need to scroll through the whole thing. But if we go back into the slide, what I did is I took out some key sections, and I said, you're not allowed to make misleading statements. Everything about their statements are misleading. You can't make false claims. Everything is false. You can't, and this is really key, you can't divert money. You can't take money that's supposed to be for one purpose and use it for another purpose. And so that's all the Clinton Foundation has done in New York. I've only focused here under New York law, but I've looked, and I'm not a lawyer, I've looked into California law and Massachusetts law and other laws. Basically, the states where there's a high income tax rate and a big government tend to have strict rules about charities, because the states are concerned that a deduction taken at federal level for charities is going to lessen the state tax revenue, and they do not want to see people going into states where there are a lot of rich people for these charities that are not regulated, that are not controlled properly, and engaging in the type of massive fraud that seems to be what the Clintons do. So if we go back in.
People are asking where they can purchase that Trump doll, Charles. It's a pet store.
It's a pet store around the corner is where I got it.
Yeah.
So if we go to the next page.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So this is something we have. There's a great guy I've spoken to now, Ned Ryan, who is a Fox contributor, and he was on Trish Reagan recently.
I saw that.
And he did a good job. But beforehand, he asked me to tell him, how much money had been raised by the Clinton Foundation, and he did not get. It was unfair to him because he was rushed and he didn't get it all buttoned down. So I thought I'd put this up for his benefit. And you see here, this is the total amount of contributions that they've declared from 2004 to 2017, and the total amount of grants. Typically, grants are government grants, and there can be other people, but this is where the government grants would be. This is where the public would put money up. 2.8 billion in total, and you stand back and you say, okay, this sucker has raised, in theory, 2.8 billion for something we will show you that was supposed to originally cost 100 million. I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to say, why in the hell are they allowed to raise 2.8 billion for something that cost 100 million without changing their legal paperwork? And then when you get to the question of, is it suspicious at all that the Clinton Foundation's contributions have dropped off now that Hillary failed yet again? Look at the magnitude of the drop-off. Okay, the peak year was 2014. What was 2014? That was when she was gearing up to run for president again. Okay, they raised 332 million according to these, quote, audits, which I would argue are not capturing all of the incomings. And in 2016, these figures came together after she lost. They weren't put out till November 15th, 2017. The magnitude of monies raised was just 65%.
Wow.
Right? But look at what it was in 2017.
Well, that's what I'm looking at. This is a great way you've put this together, because everyone's talking about, so this is 8 with 100 being the biggest year in 2014. So is it a 92% drop?
That would be it.
Why are other people saying it's a 60% drop? This
'Cause
seems much more dramatic.
Because they could be looking from 16 to 17.
Oh, no, I
And
think
so
14 to 17 is way more telling.
Yeah.
92% drop.
Yeah, and so obviously, if you're sitting there as a Middle Eastern government, let's say, who wants to purchase all kinds of arms, and is prepared, and MBS is out there spending $500 million on a Rembrandt, which I think he did.
That's stupid.
To spend, well, if you like Rembrandt and you got the cash, it's not bad.
500 million.
But you look at this, the total amount of government grants that we know about in this period, or potential government grants, is $1.1 billion. So if you're umpty-ump different governments around the world looking to curry favor with an incoming Clinton administration or to avoid being on the bad list, giving the Clinton Foundation $50 million, $25 million, $10 million is a no-brainer, right? It's it's found money.
They don't want Hillary putting coal in the stocking, Charles.
Exactly. So you see, I think we need to go in this area here. The big issue is how much money in the contribution area. The big issue there is how much money was really raised there. I have a suspicion that they even by 2004 they were raising money on the internet and they were simply not disclosing all the money that came in. And they were saying, well, we need to have a number. We don't want to make it look like we're coining money here, because if we say we're making way more in revenue than we're spending, nobody's going to donate. So there's pressure in this portion of it to say, we raised less than we actually raised, and you skive off the piece to pay for Chelsea's wedding and Bill's this and Hillary's that and whatever. For government grants, that's a lot more problematic, because in the donating country, typically there are the equivalent of Freedom of Information Act requests, where people in Sweden and Canada and Ireland or whatever, if they want to do the work, New Zealand, you could find out a lot about what your government's sent towards the Clinton Foundation. And of course, because the Clintons don't want to disclose and the government leaders don't want to disclose how much they stole from those grants, the required disclosures, we're going to show that on another page, leading up to 2007, they're on the IRS form, they say they had no government grants from 1998 to 2007, which we know is a bold-faced lie. So if we go to the next page.
The sentiment in New Zealand was very Clinton positive, I have to say.
Yeah, for now.
At that meeting, at that venue that I went to.
For now. So here's the record from 97 to 2007 I was talking about. Right? Total contributions and grants. We don't know in 97 because they decided, we're the Clintons, he's the president, we're not going to fill out a tax return. We just don't have to do that. Well, we're going to find out, I hope, the hard way that's not the case. And of course, we don't need an audit. And of course, there's no information on government grants for 97. But if we focus on total contributions and grants, we see if you add up the amounts shown in the 990s and you add up the amounts shown in the audits, there's 64 million more disclosed in the 990s than are captured on the audits, which $64 million just happens to be the amount of money, the approximate amount of money that I believe, at minimum, was stolen in 2004 alone. So the reason the IRS sets charities up to have an audit is precisely this reason. You're not supposed to have the same, it's not good practice to have the same firm, BKD, the same firm fill out the audit, fill out the 990, the tax form, or the IRS form, and then also, in theory, do a supposedly independent check or audit of the financial statements of the Clinton Foundation. And this is just why a minimum of $64 million, I believe, was stolen in this period, possibly a lot more than that. And through every single one of these years on the IRS form, it says there are no government grants. Okay? Yet, the audits claim there's 45 million of grants, and we know that Unitate alone, just one entity alone, provided about 70 million of grants in 2007.
So is that a BKD Books bake-off, Charles?
It is. They're busy baking away.
And this is one of the images that people will be able to enjoy in their free screensaver if they become a sponsor on Patreon for $10 per month or more.
So that's great. So remember, through 2007, no government grants. Now we've shown people this ad nauseum, but let's hit it again for the new people. The Memorandum of Understanding, this is the real one that was provided to Tom Fitton. This one, yeah, you got it. Okay, and if you go down the page, it says we stop here, it says, Chai's work is made possible, this is the biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation, by the dedicated governments around the world who are contributing to the global fight and supporting Chai's efforts, including Australia, Ireland, Great Britain, Sweden, Canada, France, Denmark, Norway, and the Dominican Republic, as well as the countries who support UNITAID. And this came out just as they were filing the tax return for 2007, which says in 2007 and all prior years that the Clinton Foundation had no government grants. Okay? And so it's just an obvious case of Robert Mueller, who was then head of the FBI, the incoming Obama administration, the IRS, and others saying, and the Senate, U.S. Senate, saying, we don't care if the Clintons lie to us. What the hell? If you keep going, this MOU, which was supposed to regulate behavior of the Clintons, it shows on the Clinton Climate Initiative, the next page, Clinton Global Initiative, Clinton Climate Initiative, it says the only government donor to CCI is Australia. Okay? Now, CCI...
just to play devil's advocate, is there any way they could be a donor without it being a grant?
No. And no. And more to the point, CCI legally has never existed. So the bigger question is, how did Alexander Downer, and we did cover this in
Crocodome Down Under.
Yeah, in early January, I think we covered it. How did Alexander Downer decide it was in Australia's, the people of Australia's interest to ink a memorandum of understanding in Sydney with Bill Clinton, who wasn't an officer or director of the Clinton Foundation in February of 2006, and then send more than close to 100 million Australian to the Clinton Foundation, even though the Clinton Foundation has never adequately disclosed receipts of those money. So this didn't exist. The government grants weren't disclosed. We don't need to beat this horse more than we've beaten it, right, because then the PETA people are really going to get upset with us. But if we go to back into the slide, and I think to the next one.
People are disturbed that I'm not watching the chat as much as they'd like, but I'm trying to run the show, watch the chat, converse with you.
All right. So we're going to close this out with 2 slides and a discussion. But the basic Clinton model here is to omit key documents. You think of Hillary and the billing records. Think of whatever controversy the Clintons are involved with, they make sure to try to keep material documents away from the view of the public and specifically away from the regulators. Okay, this is a lease document. We've had it up, I believe, provided it on the site. I forget in which video. But there is a lease document. It's dated March 1st, and it specifically says that the tenant, which is deemed to be the William J. Clinton Presidential Center, okay, will spend roughly $100 million, of which $75.5 million is supposed to be for everything other than landscaping. Okay? So this center was only supposed to cost, in March 1st, 2002, roughly $75.5. That's everything. The library, the museum, the Clinton School of Public Service, everything. And they were supposed to spend $24.4 million on landscaping. Now, $24.4 million on landscaping, you could create the Hanging Gardens of Babylon for $24.4 million. I mean, depending on where you're located, but in Arkansas, where the ground is...
But didn't Stuart Dean tell us that it's specifically expensive to put mini golf courses on the roof of double-wide trailers that are cantilevered out over a fake pond?
But those are construction-related expenses. I'm talking about the landscaping. I actually, on a much smaller project, obviously, but it was 35. Actually, it was bigger in the land. On 35 acres, I moved around. I had people move around 12 acres. I converted a hill like this, Jason, into terrace, hill, terrace, hill, terrace, and in no way did it come close to costing even $100,000, let alone, and I had 2 bulldozers and multiple teams out on the land, for several months. And then beyond that, taking this land, removing all the stones that are in New York State, upstate New York land. It's got a lot of rock in it. Taking out all the fine stones, which can be, and the big stones, but the fine ones that can hurt animals. And then seeding these the 12-acre lawn, which is a big lawn, and nursing it to life.
Well, you're forgetting a huge part of it, though, Charles. I think they do charge extra per dead body that you want put underneath there.
Right, but still, $24.4 million is a massive sum. It does not show, as we'll show you in a second, it does not show up on the Clinton books anywhere that they spent $24.4 million. And beyond that, in the same lease, it says the tenant was formed not to fight HIV/AIDS, not for some program mentoring people in Harlem, not for anything in climate change or some Gab Fest in New York and the Gab Fest in Hong Kong. No, for the primary purpose of designing, constructing, and initially endowing a presidential archival depository. That's it. Okay? So what is here, this is a key document that if a member of the public saw this, they'd say, now wait a minute, They negotiated with the city of Little Rock, and the city of Little Rock said, if you spend $100 million, we'll give you this land for 99 years for free, basically $1 a year. The benefit of that bargain is not recorded properly in the books and records of the Clinton Foundation. They should have figured out on that day, what was the net present value of, what was the value of this, and what was the value of the lease, and they should have gone through and recorded an asset and a liability on the books that would diminish over time, assuming these things happened, and then they should have adjusted this to check and make sure that indeed $99.97 million was spent on this mess. If less was spent on the mess, then Little Rock was making, and I would argue, an illegal donation to the Clinton Foundation, which has to be mentioned in the IRS forms for the Clinton Foundation in section 82, answer to question 82, I forget which part of it is, we'll be writing it up. So this is a key transaction, a very material transaction, and it's of course omitted from the filings, but more important, the non-compliant BKD audit for 2001 was also signed on March 1st, 2002 by BKD. And it says somehow the BKD genius did not know about this lease, or maybe decided, what the hell, I will say one thing to the city of Little Rock, but another thing to the public. This says, complete project costs are unknown at this time, but are estimated to be $160 million. This says 99.97, BKD says $160 million. Why does any of that matter? Guess who was auditing the city of Little Rock?
Truman the Tiger.
BKD. Oh. So they're not independent.
Charles, I want to thank Cindy Holcomb, who's hit us up on the Super Chat there. People are getting more interested in Super Chat on Crowdsource the Truth too, now that we feel like perhaps Patreon might be ignoring some people. But I did find this image of Truman the Tiger when I was putting together the very cool Sunday with Charles screensaver that people will now get as a free gift when they sponsor the show on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth for $10 a month or more. So this is crazy. I mean, all this stuff.
Well, even more. There's even more. But wait, there's more.
There's more.
Free shipping. In addition to all these problems, so you have, an omitted lease, which is a material transaction not disclosed in this fake audit. You have differences on the estimate. Material, 60% difference. Remember, there's another $60 million discrepancy. But according to Arkansas State records, BKD LLP was not licensed to provide accounting or tax services until the 17th of March, St. Patrick's Day, 2003. So even this non-compliant audit, which was issued in the name of BKD LLP, I suspect that document was issued retroactively, which is you backdating an audit, I think the accountants will tell us, is a serious issue.
Have we heard anything from Eric Hansen since all this conversation has begun?
I think he's gone radio silent. He's in,
Oh, did we find, oh wow, look at this. A second picture of Eric Hansen with Truman the Tiger. This one's much better. Look, what's he got here? He's got an Eric Hansen leading the way, poster. Oh, wait a minute. This is, wow, more Truman the Tiger pictures. 2018, this was on Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. He's leading the way in accountancy. The new admit welcome banquet. What is he going to admit, I wonder? He's not admitting too much so far, but he's got a lot of photo ops with Truman the Tiger.
He's got a lot of stuff to admit. So if we go to the, I think this is the final slide.
That is too
or no,
funny.
there's two more, I guess. Yeah, so we've put this slide out before, but in the non-compliant audit that was created in 2004, or for 2004, and for the new people, please focus on this. They overstated the value of construction in progress by this number, 40,358,566. Then they falsely claimed that long-term debt was outstanding, 28,479,870 at the beginning of the year when it wasn't, and they falsely claimed that accounts payable grew by 11,878,696, and so the net impact here is zero of these. This is obviously a forced.
Well, they have so many occasions of that happening.
Right, but this, when I, as somebody who knows, I'm not an accountant, but I employ accountants and I've done a lot of work looking at financial statements, when you see this type of a change, you say, whoa, you call the authorities right away, because you say, this is obviously a bunch of gangsters who got together. When you produce this type of a document, an audit, the management has to negotiate with the auditor and provide to the auditor what's called a management representation letter that lays out anything the auditor might call into question as being an issue. And typically the auditor is tough and fierce because they're independent, and they say, we believe you have an issue with overstating construction in progress. We look at this lease, it says you're going to spend 99.97 million on the project, 75 odd million on the thing. How could you overstate construction in process, excluding landscaping, by 40.4 million? And we can look at the bank records. You did not borrow this money at year end 2003. You borrowed it on February 20th thereabouts, 2004. I mean, auditors clearly, I would argue, are part of this fraud.
Yeah.
And it may be individual auditors within BKD as opposed to the firm, but clearly, in my mind, auditors were involved in this. And then we look at the actual declaration of what was the gross property, plant, and equipment, 71.779 at year-end 2003 in the missing audit that you can't find on the Clinton Foundation site because they purposely exclude it. What was it at year-end 2004 on the same audit? 86,843. What is the difference? 40,358,566, that 40.4 million. So clearly people decided, you know what? We're just going to pick a number out of the air, throw it on this balance sheet, make the numbers work. And Donald Trump and his team at the Trump Organization are getting a lot of grief for possible issues with selling condominiums to Russians,
Building the Trump Tower
building
in
the
Moscow.
But the point is, Donald Trump's team would understand that this is a prima facie set of bad numbers. People are cooking the books. They're inflating the value of this complex to hide the fact that people around the Clinton Foundation were stealing money. What were they using it for? Most likely in 2004, financing Democratic campaigns, for presidential campaigns. Terry McAuliffe was the lead independent director of the Clinton Foundation and chairman of the Democrat National Committee in 2004. When they needed money, the Republicans had an advantage monetarily. This reeks, and the fact that the IRS has not jumped all over this, the fact that the FBI hasn't been able to do anything about it, the fact that Robert Mueller and Rod Rosenstein and James Comey, in theory, were investigating through 2005 and didn't see any of this, in my mind, disqualifies all these people from having anything to do with any job of responsibility in the Justice Department, or frankly, in my mind, these people should be disbarred.
Prosecuted.
They should be disbarred, and then they should be prosecuted and incarcerated to set an example that officers of the court cannot conspire both to perpetrate frauds like this and then to obstruct the process of understanding what had actually happened.
I think we're only just now beginning to learn the details and the extent to which this type of thing is done on a regular basis. I think we're learning how people in the news are complicit by putting out these types of stories. We saw that guy Ari interviewing Dr. Corsi. His first statement out of the bag was that Mueller doesn't leak, Corsi leaks. And it's like, dude, that's so not true.
That's stupid, yeah.
It's
Ari
stupid.
Melber you're talking about?
I guess that's his name, Ari Mumbler.
Yeah.
But, and the other thing that's interesting, Charles, is that Google Earth seems to have upgraded itself somehow, as I was trying to look at the William J. Clinton Foundation over here. But
It's not there?
no, it's there. It just is just a little bit of doing to get Google Earth to show it to us. As usual, like to feature the building when you're talking about it costing, $100 million to build.
Yeah.
So IMAX theaters ain't cheap, Charles.
Exactly. So if we go to the final slide, we've shown this to people before, but I thought it would be useful to close with this, because really the headline here is that this thing has been a fraud since inception. The Clintons were under great pressure to raise money for the re-election campaign. They were under in '96, great pressure to raise money for Hillary, her Senate bid, great pressure to position her to run for president the first and the second time. But what should be particularly odious to those of us across the political spectrum is the fact that these people, including a man who I believe may still be the second dean of the Clinton School of Public Service, defrauded the National Archives.
Yeah.
I mean, the facts are that a foundation that was supposed, in order to make a donation, a legally compliant donation to the National Archives, the Clinton Foundation had to be a presidential archive and research center, and that's it. It had to comply with the statutes that pertain to presidential libraries, and it had to make sure that it was at all times operated, having been organized lawfully. But it wasn't. And the definition as written says the term foundation means authorized officers, directors, employees, agents, independent contractors, volunteers, or other persons or groups acting for the foundation or on its behalf. So this very cautious definition that went into an agreement dated November 18th, 2004, certainly would have contemplated Bill Clinton and Ira Magaziner, who were engaged in illegal activities with the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS, and later Bob Harrison, illegal activities with the Clinton Global Initiative. So, I mean, this, right on its face, before they signed this agreement on November 18th, as they were negotiating it, the Magaziner and Clinton, who are both Rhodes Scholars, but all three of those people are Rhodes Scholars. Bill Clinton, Ira Magaziner, Bob Harrison, all Rhodes Scholars. So super smart people, and
I don't trust those Rhodes Scholars.
that's why I call them rogue scholars. But they don't have the ignorance defense, the what me worry defense. These people are smart people, and they had to know that they were defrauding the National Archives in a way which, here it says, in a recital, the foundation has received a final determination from the IRS that it is organized and operated exclusively for charitable and educational purposes. There is no such thing as a final determination. An IRS determination letter is conditional. It's based on the representations that are made in the application on Form 1023. The IRS cannot possibly study in depth every application that is made. It just doesn't have the manpower, person power to do that. So what they do is they warn you in the application. They say, listen, we're going to grant you your determination, your authority to operate as a tax-exempt entity based on the representations you make. If those are subsequently found to be false, you're in deep trouble. If you actually go to the right, Jason, one up. As of November 18th, 2004, they certainly hadn't received a determination letter for this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative, what I call Old Shy, that was fighting HIV/AIDS internationally, an activity that the main Clinton Foundation supposedly controlled, but for which the main Clinton Foundation had no authority to control. And so people had to know. Now maybe it's a case of dopey Andrew Kessel was kept in a dung heap away from the rest of the operation. But no, when you look at the Old Chai 990, that is to say the tax form for Old Chai, that is hidden on the Clinton Foundation, not available on the Clinton Foundation site, but is available in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and elsewhere, you see that Andrew Kessel was involved with keeping the records of this Old Chai. So people in the Clinton Foundation in Little Rock, there was a conspiracy, I would argue, and it's an ongoing conspiracy to defraud we the people by causing a donation to be, in theory, made to the National Archives that was not properly valued. It was shown to be a lot less than it really was. It was not made by a lawfully constructed organization, so therefore it couldn't happen in the first place. But they conspired to get all these people together and hold an opening ceremony, and then once the thing was publicized, and once there was all this attention to it, it would have been massive egg on face to go back and say, you know what, whoops, we did this all wrong. So Bush having been reelected, they got together and they said, all right, we'll play along. We'll let this puppy continue. So if we go here, it says the foundation's charitable purposes include constructing yada, yada, yada. They don't include, they're limited to these purposes. It should have said no other purposes are authorized than these. And then if you look here on the right-hand side, it says in section 1, truth of recitals. It says, NARA and the foundation and acknowledge and agree that the matters set forth in the recitals to this joint use agreement are true and correct. And they weren't true and correct on November 18th, 2004.
Is that 18 U.S.C. 1001?
It could well be. Could well be. So what you're going to see, and I don't know precisely what the whistleblowers are going to do on Thursday, but I believe what we're going to be learning this week, with many more eyes interested in learning truth, thanks to Crowdsource the Truth and other venues, we are going to see a lot of difficult facts. And what we are going to quickly learn, and I think what the Twitter comments, for example, that we scrolled through, everybody knows this is a fraud, right? This isn't, that's
James
not,
Comey doesn't.
yeah, everybody except dopey James Comey knows this is a fraud. But what we don't yet understand yet is the degree to which Republicans and Democrats and independents and bureaucrats have been conspiring to obstruct a real investigation into these Clinton Foundation frauds. Why? In part because they're so big and potentially so embarrassing. So you can see an argument coming down from on high, well, look, if this gets out, it's going to embarrass the Bushes, it's going to embarrass Clinton and Obama, but it'll be bad for America if we let this out.
No, I think it's that they've been at it so hard for so long that they've gotten each of these people involved in such a way that it's, if I go down, you go down kind of thing.
Excuse me, exactly. So where we are, though, I think, looking ahead this week, we're going to hear a lot about how Donald Trump's people, that Donald Trump had his Trump Foundation, and that's a problem. We're going to hear a lot about how Michael Cohen was out there trying to get corporations to retain him, and as he was searching to have a high government position in the Trump administration. I want to pause and just remind people that this Teneo Corporation, that this network of Teneo, T-E-N-E-O entities led by Doug Band, that's precisely what the Clintons were doing. That Doug Band, the supposed architect of the Clinton post-presidency, he paid Bill Clinton 2011, I think $100,000, while Clinton was involved with the Chai and Clinton Global Initiative and other things, to help create this Teneo thing, which is exactly what people are accusing Michael Cohen of doing, only Teneo still exists and has been financed and has done so well that Doug Band has somehow managed to purchase for an estimated $20 to $25 million David Rockefeller's Park Avenue mansion in Manhattan. And I don't think he did it with family money, although he may have.
I mean, it's just amazing, Charles, how they are constantly accusing the other side of what they're doing. And it's a problematic thing, because then when you say, well, that's what you're doing, the first thing is you look foolish, because it's like, oh, you're just saying that because I just said it.
Well, but here I think, where the rubber meets the road this coming week should be on Thursday when people ask the question, all right, earlier this year, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions announced that, or maybe it was the preceding year, that Huber is it John Huber, I think, was going, the U.S. Attorney in Salt Lake City, Utah, was going to be the one investigating allegations by the Republicans of problems with the Clinton Foundation. So that's back in, let's call it February this year, to use a rough day.
Even if he just watched one episode of Sunday with Charles per day, he should have a litany of information by now.
So the real question here for me, and what I want to see answered on this coming Thursday, is how much money was spent on that project? How much time was spent on that project? Did they hire forensic accountants? What specifically did they do? Did they go to Little Rock? Did they go to New York to look at the Clinton Foundation? Did they go to Boston? Did they travel internationally? Did they contact donors? Did they contact BKD and Price Waterhouse and Cohn Resnick? What the hell did they do? In contrast to what we see happen with Manafort, they show up in the dead of night and dry clean his house, throw him in prison before he's actually gone through trial. There's just a gross miscarriage of justice here. On the one hand, Robert Mueller and his goons will descend on people like Jerry Corsi and others, and this Kane guy, to try to intimidate whistleblowers. And we do have, I think, a long history under the Obama administration, and to a certain extent the Bush administration, of the FBI being used to intimidate whistleblowers, which I think is really diabolical.
I think it goes beyond the overt intimidation of kicking in the door, which there are plenty of examples of that happening. Dennis Kane, Paul Manafort, Michael Moore has told us that happened to him. I think there are more subtle and insidious methods, like people who are posing as reporters, posing as reporting, going to someone's house. I mean, we've seen that happen where witnesses have come forward, and to try to thwart this crowdsource investigative journalism process, which over the past 2 years has shown itself to be incredibly powerful. Not because of me, just because of the nature of what it is. We've had witnesses come forward who have rented homes from Imran Awan, but we see these social media personalities pop up who then try to cast doubt on those witnesses before we even have a chance to hear their stories, doxing their families, accusing their families of things that remain unproven. But it makes it very difficult for witnesses who are out there to come forward, because they're going to say, well, I don't want to be exposed like that. I mean, people are putting out my ex-wives' names. They have nothing to do with any of this. They're doing it obviously to insult me, intimidate them, create problems in my personal life where people are getting angry at me who, have nothing to do with this. So I think my best advice for the week is that when people see trolling going on in the comments, and it's pretty obvious most of the time, even if you suspect that there's trolling going on, I'm not joking. Send a response to that comment and let them know that you're sending $1 or you're sending $5 either to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth or become a sponsor on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. For $10 a month or more, you're going to get this awesome, free, exclusive Volume 1 of the Sunday with Charles screensaver. You can put it on your Mac or your PC and enjoy the imagery of Sunday with Charles when your computer is idle. So that's nice.
That's excellent.
Anything else you'd like to share with us today, Charles?
No, this is going to be a very action-packed week. I should mention another thing, actually. General Electric, which when I first got involved was trading at $40 a share, and no, it hasn't split, closed on Friday at $7.01.
Yes, I see that, Charles. It's
And
not good.
Not good, and that graph is an expert ski slope, particularly when you look at the period October. I don't know if you can do, year to date, or is that year to date, or is that?
Here's year to date.
Yeah. Look at the degree to which it falls off in October, and this is going to become quite a story. Not, I am, I suppose, pushing something that I have been working on, but I think when we take a step back and we consider most people, even people who don't understand business and investing that well, will assume that General Electric was an important company, and they won't maybe know exactly why it was so important, but at its peak in May, I believe, of 2000, it had a total value that was approached $1 trillion. And at this, this valuation of $7, it has a total value, rough value of 70 or so, maybe 60 billion of equity and another 100 or so of debt. So total enterprise value, let's call it 200, just to give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, this is, in 18 years, these very smart people, some of whom are making $20 million a year, and legions of staff and accountants and McKinsey and other consultants, and no shortage of resources, have managed to drive this company into the dirt, approaching bankruptcy. And I think there needs to be comeuppance here. You can't just have a system in this country where CEOs and senior level executives make tons of money for middling performance and even more money for good performance, but when things hit the fan, and this is a company that I would argue was rescued two different ways: overtly by Warren Buffett when he purchased shares, got a sweetheart deal that the rest of the public did not get, and indirectly when the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, allowed GE Capital to avail itself of a facility that it should not have had the ability to get, and therefore to sell debt on advantageous terms when they weren't able really otherwise to sell it in 2008-9. When you avail yourself of a rescue of the magnitude that they avail themselves, and then you belly flop afterward, there needs to be real penalties. Otherwise, you're going to have a succession of CEOs and top people do this. The moral hazard here is going to be massive.
Bailout.
And it's going to be corrosive as well, because it'll fuel the concerns, the valid concerns that it seems that people in the public have, that these fat cats in big corporations, they don't care about us. They're just take a bailout as General Motors did, and then shut factories that hurt, in the heartland where there are a lot of people who were depending on that work, and still pay themselves a tremendous amount of money. So there needs to be, if Alexandria or whatever her name is,
Ocasio or
Cortez wants to, find one area of common cause with me, this would be an area where I just don't think multinational entities, whether they be for-profit or not-for-profit, should be allowed to go around the world behaving badly, financing illegally lifestyles for the Clintons and their family and friends in a charity, which you're not supposed to do, or alternatively, allowing people like Jeffrey Immelt and his successor Flannery, and maybe this guy Culp, briefly, to live the high life.
Flannery?
Is his name, the guy who succeeded Immelt. You shouldn't be allowed to do this, and there should be real penalty. You shouldn't be allowed to use debt to buy your company stock back at overvalued prices to prop up the value of GE shares, and then when everything goes the wrong way, suddenly you look at a mess and GE sitting on a massive loss. You shouldn't be allowed to do that and simultaneously pay executives the way they're paid.
Yeah, well, or they should just go out of business. I mean, I don't agree with these bailouts, but that's what Bush wanted to do, and that's what Obama did. I'm really disappointed that this incoming Attorney General is a Bush swamp monster. When will President Trump learn that these guys are no good? Why didn't he get Sidney Powell to be Attorney General? Why didn't he get, somebody like that? That would show me that he's shaking it up over there. Put Larry Klayman in that position. I mean, he's never going to get approved.
I think the challenge is that he needs to get somebody in the seat as Attorney General, right? If he's gotten rid of Sessions, he needs to fill that seat. He needs to get somebody who could be Senate confirmed.
Why not leave Whitaker there for as long as possible?
I don't know.
And drain the swamp that way?
I don't
get it. I hope that the naysayers are wrong, and I hope that Donald Trump is still firmly in control of this. But we need some action soon. As you said, Charles, this week is going to be pivotal. So,
well, now that Elizabeth Warren has been discredited, maybe what we could do is we could buy her TomTom for 10 cents on the dollar or whatever. And if Donald Trump and his team don't start to step up to the plate this week, we may have to beat that TomTom beginning next Sunday.
Are you going to make some powwow chow for Christmas this year, Charles?
Definitely not.
Well, there have been a lot of people commenting. They want me to respond to Super Chat in the way that Dr. Corsi and Lionel do. That's not the nature of this show. I'm here to support your
please do.
presentation. I think there's just no way. That would have to be a different type of show. I do want to thank our Super Chatters, people who are watching on Crowdsource the Truth 2. Can utilize Super Chat on there if they'd like to do that. As I've said, people can also sponsor the show by going to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, where $10 per month sponsors and up are now, as of today, going to receive a free Sunday with Charles screensaver. So that's a thank you gift to our sponsors on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. If you're already a sponsor at $10 per month or higher, you can go there and download your screensaver now. And I'd love to hear feedback from people as to how they like that screensaver. I used a commercial tool. It's remarkably hard to find a commercial tool to make screensavers, but there you go. It's in there, and we appreciate all of our sponsors. I do want to set the minds at ease of people who are not happy that Patreon can deplatform people who Patreon doesn't like. I was very disappointed in Jack Conte, and I am trying to get in touch with him to have a conversation about it. Of course, even that conversation potentially puts me at risk of being knocked off of that platform. So I'm also exploring other options for how to offer that exclusive content that we're offering on Patreon to people on other platforms. There are people who want to send checks. They can email me, truth@crowdsourcethetruth.org, and I'll provide that address. And of course, there's the ongoing efforts of trolls. So I want to encourage people, if you see a troll comment, respond to that comment not with ire, but just let them know that you're sending $5 to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. And that'll stop the trolls, because once they start to equate their activity with the financial success of Crowdsource the Truth, they'll stop.
Good thinking.
I think so. Anyway, Charles, thank you for another fantastic episode of Sunday with Charles. I'll see you on Wednesday, where you'll be closing in, and hopefully Hillary Clinton will be one step closer to jail.
We can only hope.
Although that hearing's not until Thursday, so we won't know until then.
Happy Hanukkah.
Oh yes, happy last night of Hanukkah, Charles. I think it's the last.
Tomorrow night.
Well, see, Charles, you know more about it than I do. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. And don't forget, tomorrow at 11 a.m., only on Patreon, we've got Light on Conspiracies with Ole Damagard. So join Patreon now. You can go back and watch all the back episodes of Light on Conspiracies and watch our show tomorrow, only on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth.